The Seven Last Words of Christ is a narrative built entirely on spoken dialogue, yet composers attempt to communicate this using pure instrumental mechanics. Since the 17th century, these biblical phrases have functioned as a structural matrix for Western musical composition, forcing composers to find ways to make instruments speak. The contemporary composer James MacMillan argues that modern instrumental settings of the Passion must function as rigorous exegesis, translating historicized narrative into a psychological melodrama. This presents a specific architectural problem, mapping a spoken sentence onto pure sound, without losing the semantic weight of the original text. The pipe organ functions as a complex acoustic engine to solve this problem. Its manuals, pedal boards, and individual pipes provide the mechanical depth for translation. Pamela Decker's 2018 cycle, The Seven Last Words and Triumph of Christ, serves as the case study for this modernist translation. Decker encodes theology directly into the architecture of the music. Pitch contour, counterpoint, and registration operate as a precise linguistic system. In this tier of sacred music, the instrument's specific mechanics serve as the biblical text. We begin with the first movement, which maps Christ's initial statement from the cross, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." Decker establishes the setting by writing a contrapuntal texture she describes as a song and dance. This complex, weaving rhythm represents the secular, earthbound community, a world unaware of the spiritual reality occurring above it. This top stave shows the primary theme in the highest voice, determined by prosodic rules. The vocal inflection of the spoken phrase dictates exact pitch and duration. This melody floats above the contrapuntal dance, locking Jesus' voice into the organist's physical movement. This vector chart maps the underlying harmonic progression. The tonal center shifts upward in a stepwise motion: G minor, A minor, B flat minor, and C minor. As the melody becomes increasingly chromatic, this upward shift simulates the descent of divine mercy into a broken world. The tension resolves at the conclusion of the movement, where the need for forgiveness and the act of mercy coalesce into a G major chord. Through strict prosodic rules, Decker forces the abstract concept of mercy into a measurable mechanical reality. When composing the second movement, depicting the promise of paradise, the composer faces a challenge. Attempting to voice ancient concepts of victory often results in derivative pastiche. Decker bypasses this by utilizing a musical palimpsest. She embeds raw historical artifacts directly into a dissonant, modernist framework, bridging centuries of musical tradition. The primary structural element of the movement is the 8th century chant Christus Vincit, or Christ Conquers, which Decker layers directly into the score. Decker repurposes this ancient chant as a rigid fugal subject. The unrelenting repetition mathematically enforces the concept of victory over death. The macro-level triumph of the toccata contrasts with the micro-level intimacy of Jesus speaking to the thief beside him. To voice this exchange, Decker borrows from Bach's Cantata 106. She extracts the rhythmic motif from Bach's text and drops it into her score. By assigning this motif to a reed 8-foot registration, Jesus' voice gets a distinct acoustic halo amidst the dissonance. Layering an 8th century chant and a Baroque Bach aria inside a 21st century toccata creates an intertextual timeline, manifesting the narrative's continuity across a millennium of tradition. This technique of assigning character to hardware becomes precise in the third movement, which focuses on the intimate exchange between Jesus, Mary, and the disciple John. Measures 1 through 9 show Decker assigning roles to organ mechanisms. The tenor voice, an 8-foot stop, represents Jesus. The soprano and pedal lines, a 4-foot flute, carry the Ave Maria chant, representing Mary. Their contrapuntal intertwining physically simulates their new filial relationship. That quiet intimacy breaks in the fourth movement, translating the psychological desolation of the words, "My God, why have you forsaken me?" Here, the pre-existing hymn tune Bangor is weaponized, distorted through a series of variations to represent a visceral cry of pain. Look at the extreme density of notation at the climax of Variation 3, where the mathematical structure intentionally ruptures. a torrential pedal cadenza surges upward. The physical demands mirror the agonizing exertion, followed by triple forte crashing chords stretching the keyboard's physical limits. These registration assignments and dynamic choices serve as structural stand-ins for human relationship and psychological agony. This timeline represents the chronological progression of Decker's cycle. When we step back, the cycle appears as a complete, engineered system. Across the timeline, we find prosody dictating pitch, intertextuality bridging centuries, hardware registration assigning character, and dynamic rupture simulating psychological collapse. In the 12th century, the theologian Arnold of Bonneval observed that the final words of Christ function as a mystical compendium of the entire gospel. Bonneval's ancient theological requirement is exactly what composers like Decker and MacMillan solve through modern compositional mechanics. By stripping away the sung text, the composer places the burden of proof entirely on the physical architecture of the sheet music. Changing a single organ stop, shifting a pedal syncopation, or altering the prosodic rhythm alters the specific theology being communicated. In modernist sacred music, rigorous mathematical design turns the instrument itself into the exegesis.